Okay, here's your ring, and I'm going to go ahead and put this on the cutter layer and start clearing some stuff off here. And if we shade this with the plastic shader. Okay, so here's the matrix art, which neat job on the artwork. That should be really cool. We want to put this up here, and let's go ahead and extract. Since this piece is already set up, we'll go ahead and just extract this surface right here, and I'm going to place it on the metal 4 layer. So there, that's segregated. But since this was part of a trim operation, it probably doesn't have the same border as if it was just made on its own. So we're going to click that and go to Surface and go to Shrink Trimmed Surface right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click that, and if we hit F2 for the command history, we'll notice that that surface was indeed shrunk down. So what that does is it makes the borders of the surface down to the extents of the surface and not something greater because it came from a trimmed surface. So that's important. Okay. At this point then, if we were to run the command to apply the mesh, which is right here, apply mesh UVN, where this is right here, you get pretty odd results. So if we go ahead and click on that surface, it puts it up kind of like that, and that's not what we're looking for. So apparently the problem, and I've never quite tried it with this hanging out over here, but this should be flat down on the ground plane. So I'm going to go from this viewport, and there's a command that you can do that in Rhino, to where we go transform, and it's right here, remap to C-plane. So if we start in the side view viewport and click that, it'll ask us what viewport do you want to map it to, and I'll click looking down. So so there's that, and then I would also put this down on the ground where I want it, the relationship to the surface. So I'm going to go over to Utilities and say Center Object, and I'm going to move it all center, and then I'm going to move this up so that this will be poking into that surface just a little bit. So the relationship of this red line at F4 down is how much it'll be sticking into that surface. Okay, so now we don't know quite which way this is supposed to go, so I'm going to go ahead and click this and redo Apply Mesh UVN, and it goes on sideways. So I need to spin this around this way to get the point to go down, I think. So let's hit undo, and we'll go rotate from F4. Which way? I guess this way. And I also need to rotate it from F4 this way, so it's facing down. Okay, so now we have that. So let's click this, apply mesh on there, and we're in business. Okay. Now, a lot of times what you want to do is, rather than trying to make this the exact shape of what we have, you want to make it just a little bit bigger, because it's going to flow and it's going to fill in this area anyway. But here our aspect is a little bit off, so we don't quite fill this in. Now I have a fix for this, and that is, we'll have to get rid of this again. We could use the taper command, which is here, but I find I have a bit more control if I use cage edit. So if I start cage edit and do bounding box, then let's see, we'll do X count 2 and Y count 2, and Z count 4 is fine. That actually doesn't matter because I'm not changing the Z. So now we have so I'm going to select both of those and do a 1D scale from F4 and pull that out like so. So there's that. Let's do that a little bit more. Alright, so now let's see how this fills in. So we'll select this and do apply mesh UVN again onto that surface. And so now that fills that area in for us. Now we're missing, I think, if we turn off metal 1, yeah, we're missing part of this, but that's the nature of the beast there. So we would also have to taper this back the other way if we wanted to realize, which we can do. We can go and select this, and if you want the cage edit back, you select that and then turn on the control points, and you're back in the cage edit. And F4. So we'll squeeze that back this way a bit. And so now if we go here and apply mesh one more time, there we go. So we're starting to get more of that back, and then this is sticking through here a little bit, and so I'm going to go ahead and move this in just a little bit. So I'm just going to select it and move it in. There we go. Now the only drag about all this is that now this part sticks into the finger hole here, and that's because it's so thin. Let's turn on. It's so thin right here, and the way the surface is made, this is going off the surface into there. So the next thing that I would try, and we'll see how this all works out, is I would do a Boolean or a trim, and I would do it slightly bigger than the finger rail. So I'm going to start at F4, and I'm going to make that bigger than the finger rail like so. Alright, so there's cylinder. Now in theory then, here's what we could start to do. Now I already know this is probably going to fail, because I sat and worked on this before I did the video to figure out what was wrong. But if we select this, and then I'm just going to type mesh split. I always type all the mesh commands. Select the cutting object here. Okay, so let's see what happens here. If we click here, it did not split it. The next thing I would try then is to do a mesh Boolean. So we do mesh Boolean difference, and we select the second set, which is here, and let's see how that goes. Okay, it doesn't say so, but that Boolean failed as well, and as a matter of fact, it got rid of the cutter. Sometimes, let's hit undo. Sometimes it's because this is a NURBS geometry, and you can use NURBS geometry in a Boolean mesh, but sometimes what I'll do is go in and this is mesh, create mesh, where's mesh? Mesh from NURBS object. And what I do is I don't use the simple controls here. I go to detailed, and I would go 0 here, 0 there, and maximum edge length would be 0.2. And what that's going to make is, that doesn't matter, we'll turn that off. That makes a very tightly woven mesh where no length of the mesh is longer than 0.2 millimeters. And so there's that. So now we'll take this and say mesh Boolean difference with that mesh, and we'll let that go ahead and do its business, and that fails as well. So we're having trouble cutting this item. Now, in working with matrix art items, I have found over the years that, especially if we're milling this, you don't want to cap the object, because we have more trouble splitting this mesh and working with it being capped. So if we select this and hit explode, we can see that this is now split into two meshes, the back being one mesh and the front being the other. So now we'll take this and apply it, apply mesh UVN to this surface, and then go about splitting that as well. So here's mesh split. Okay, with this being the cutting object. Alright, and let's see how we did, and it still isn't split. At this point, the last trick that I have is to reduce the complexity of this mesh, at which point we'll come over to utilities, and here's mesh reduce, and it'll come up and say here we have 227,808 polygons. So I'm going to reduce this by 25%. So now it heads down to 170, and then you basically need to just look at what happened. So if we hit undo, there's what it looks like right now. And if we hit redo, no noticeable change to me. As a matter of fact, at that point, I would do reduce mesh again and try it by another 25%. And hit OK. And so now there's that, and we'll hit undo and look at it, and then hit redo. And I think it held up pretty well. So we'll stop right there. With that done, oh, I need to move this back in a little bit as well. Hey, there's an Apple update. Yay. Thanks for nothing. Alright, so now that's not sticking in there. Okay. And so this one now, let's do mesh split again. And the cutting object is here. And so we've reduced that mesh, we've toned it down, makes our computer happier too. And then now we click on that and we win. So kind of earned that, but those are the I mean, you can go ahead and go straight to getting the back off and rebuilding it if you do a lot of these, and the mill could care less whether there's a surface there or not on the back. And so not that you would know to just get rid of it, but so now if we start to do that, that should work. Alright.